Good morning, guys. This is the Recovery Channel podcast. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the addiction doctor, as usual, along with Jennifer Lovely. Good morning, Jen. How are we doing?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
Doing good. This morning, I went in for a procedure, as you know, on Monday. It took me completely down on Tuesday, and then coming back a little bit today. So I'm doing good. So it's lovely out here in San Antonio, Texas. But just a little bit sore around here. Apart from that, I've got my compression shirt on today.
Oh, you do? Yeah. You look quite cozy.
Yeah, it's cold. I went out to walk the dogs this morning at 7 a.m. and I had to turn around, come back, put some trousers on, had shorts on, some pants, and then take them out again. It was absolutely freezing.
Yeah, well, it's raining. That's all it does here now, right? Rain.
Yeah. So you're still over there, aren't you? Not over in the warm part.
Yes. Soon. Next month in the warm part.
Oh, good. What, yeah. For keeps?
For several months. Okay,
so you still got the other place?
Yes.
Everyone at home's going, what the hell are you talking about?
I know.
Yeah, you're gonna have to buy the books. Yeah. Oh dear. So how's your day look? My day's kind of back to back until 3, then I'm free as a bird.
Back to back until 3, and then I go see a client later this afternoon who had a double mastectomy. So I'm going to go visit her.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I know what you're thinking. Who have we got on the show? Well, guys, listen at home. We've got. I tell you what. When I read this guy's story online, I'm like, it makes mine look like a walk in the park. It really does. And I'm glad we can laugh about it today. But Jim Breedlove is on the show, guys. An amazing story. I'm not going to get into it at all and let him tell you a story. But I spent about 20 minutes last night and this morning just looking over some of the stuff. Just like us, fall from grace and then get up even bigger and then stand out proud. Because that's what we do. We recover out loud so others can recover in peace if they want to. But the addiction's not going away. The alcoholism is not going away. So we can either ignore it like we have been doing for the last 30-something years. And look where that's got us. One of the biggest epidemics of our lifetime, drug addiction and prescription drugs. And by the way, guys, let me tell you something for nothing. The brain doesn't know the difference between prescription and street drugs. So don't come that with me. Oh, it's not as bad. I got it off the doctor. Yeah, we need to have a serious talk about that because that's not good. And it's getting worse and worse. When I come over to this country, I told everyone 14 years ago, we have an epidemic. And I'm telling you what it starts with. It's Adderall. We need to watch it. And patients that come to us, and me and Jen, every time, what happened? Well, I went to the doctor and I got a stop. It's the same old story. I got a prescription for pain meds. I got a prescription for ADHD, all this stuff. And now they're on the streets looking for drugs and their life is a mess. Stop looking all of the time to the street dealers. And that's one of the reasons I think why some states are decriminalizing, because the street dealers are not what started off 80% of the time. It's the guy in the suit with the medical degree. Oh, I'm going to get some complaints now. That's what it is.
Well, and I also want to say that the brain actually doesn't know the difference between emotional pain and physical pain. Exactly.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And it's about time people start to realize this. And that, my friends, is what we're all about.
Yes.
We're sending out. If you want to know us, we got a great attorney. He's a beautiful guy. He's got a team of guys if you feel like suing us. But this is what needs to be said. And this is why the Recovery Channel podcast was created. Come on, guys. Let's take a look at ourselves. Okay, guys. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. I hope we haven't put you off. Now, our viewers are hardcore viewers every time. Jeff Breedlove's on the show when we come back. Guys, welcome back. This is the Recovery Channel podcast. My name is Dr. Robb, the addiction doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. Welcome to the show. We have Jeff Breedlove on the show. Good morning, Jeff. How are we?
Good morning. How are both of you?
Doing good.
Doing well. So I love your last name. I love the love in it. Cheers to that.
Thanks. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun during high school football. The coaches liked the last name too. Let's just put it that way.
Yes, I'm sure. I'm sure. I love to all the comments we probably heard forever.
Right.
So talk to me. Give me 5 things that impacted your life early.
5 things that impacted my life early. Well,
Early to late.
Certainly, I grew up in suburban Atlanta I was the oldest child of 2. So certainly my parents impacted my life in a big way. And we went to church every Sunday. And so I never had a question of who my higher power was. It is and was Christ, but I had struggles with my higher power, which we can talk about later. But so faith impacted my life. I liked politics from an early age. Jimmy Carter became the president. He was from Georgia. Everybody thought it was extraordinary. The president was from Georgia. So that impacted me as a young man very early. I loved sports and I loved to travel. My favorite city, by the way, is London, just for what it's worth. Those would be the 5 that come to mind.
I wondered where the British flag face mask come from when I was stalking you. I mean, looking at you last night.
Right,
it's unbelievable. Okay,
look, it's good to be stalked by somebody.
At least you can call it a fan club. Okay, right. Let's get straight into it. October 2016. What happened?
So October 2016, I am hosting at that point a delegation of government officials from 4 different nations across Southeast Asia for the United States Department of State. My son is playing high school football. He's a very good kicker. I am the chief of staff for a local elected county commissioner from DeKalb County, Georgia, a large metro county. So I have a great job. I have a son in the middle of football season doing great things, and I am hosting a delegation for the State Department. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? Well, what I decided to ask for was the issue that I failed at least 15 times before for the last decade, was that I could go out and have a binge of crack cocaine and manage the situation. Because after all, I had failed the last 15 times. So of course I'd succeed this time. And I left work at an event with the commissioner, and instead of going to meet my delegation with my wife, she had them at that moment, I went on a binge, and that binge ended up lasting the whole weekend. And it culminated in the early hours of Sunday morning. I was at that 1-star hotel that you referenced in DeKalb County. My police department arrested me. I was arrogant enough to make sure they knew exactly who I was. It was just like one of those commercials you see. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? I literally said that. And of course, they did. And that culminated in a scene right out of a movie. I'm telling you, there were dozens of police cars and fire trucks in this parking lot at that point. And they did not take me straight to jail. They took me to headquarters and interrogated me for many hours. And I didn't know at the time, I've learned since, some things that were going on simultaneously at headquarters. But ultimately, the decision was made to arrest me. Now, when they came in to arrest me, it's another great story of arrogance. The detective tells me, they're going to charge me with a felony, lying to the police. There was no drug. I never had a drug charge because I had nothing on me at the exact time. And so it was going to be lying to the police, which was minimum 7 years, maximum 10. And I said, well, I want to see a superior. Well, he was right around the corner, and he stepped around the corner, and he was a big, tall African-American detective, and right also out of Central Casting. And he got in my face and said some pretty adult words that were direct. And then he stopped, and he hugged me. And after he had just cussed me out, he whispered in my ear, I'll never forget it. He said, today's the day we're going to save your life. Mm. Now, he promptly began that journey of saving my life by handcuffing me, which was not a great start from my opinion, but he did. And I was driven from headquarters to the jail by a 26-year-old police officer who I had done 2 ride-alongs with for 8-hour shifts. I'd done 16 hours in a car with this 26-year-old kid who had a badge and a gun, who's a hero. And he's crying. He's 26. Right. I'm crying. I'm embarrassed. And I got processed I go into jail. I stay there for 3 days. What I didn't know was it had made the Atlanta media, and it made it for 3 or 4 days. And it made TV, radio, it made social media, blog posts and posts on Facebook and groups and things like my high school alumni group. We're talking about it, and just political pages in Atlanta were talking about it. So I had the privilege and pleasure of watching all that when I got home, and that was bad. Now, my active addiction lasted 30 years, basically from when I was 20. I'm 50 years old when I get arrested in October of 2016, and there were phases in there, right? There a long time before anybody knew, and I remind people that when I started in the 90s, we didn't have smartphones and tracking stuff like we do now, and it was very easy to learn to manipulate people. And I could lie to my coworkers, my employees, my family, and disappear for hours at a time. And I also my pattern of usage changed over 30 years, right? So the first phase, I'd use a little bit, I'd manipulate, and I'd come back, and nobody knew until I lost my first job in 1998, which began a journey of going to 7 or 8 states. I'd already worked in Washington in Congress. I'd already done the whole congressional thing. So my wife and I go to Arizona and Washington and Montana and Oregon and California twice, Sacramento and LA, and all over the place. And I'd get a job, lose a job. And here's the thing. I've always said the most dangerous part of addiction is the stigma around it. And I believe I'm a walking example of that, because nobody knew what to do. Nobody wanted to do anything. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with an addict in their campaign. These are all political campaigns, some of them high profile campaigns. And they would fire me, give me some money, and say, just go away and don't say anything. Don't ask, don't tell kind of thing. We won't say anything if you don't say anything. Well, I was pretty good at this campaign stuff. So I could lie and manipulate and get another job. So I'd get a job, lose a job, get a job, lose a job. Nobody tried to help me. I didn't want help. When I encountered police twice during that phase, I was very glad I had some privilege, and they let me go at the time. Now, of course, looking back, I wish they had not, but that's a different story too. So the stigma around it was very dangerous. It enabled me to manipulate and people to not know how to help me when I needed help. So stigma is very dangerous and a big part of my story. And then 6 years, we come home to Georgia from California. My mother-in-law is very sick. My wife becomes her primary caregiver, and I don't use. Now, my wife and I think I'm better. I'm cured. It's over. Well, of course, we didn't know what we didn't know. And of course, it wasn't over. In the last decade, and that's what I alluded to earlier, 10 or 11 years, the pattern of usage became much more dangerous, much worse, much more destructive. That's when I would steal. That's when I would pawn stuff. The car got loaned out, and very dangerous situations, guns in the face, running up high debt with dealers. My parents bailing me out, my elderly parents coming to hand over cash to dealers, my wife handing over cash to dealers, putting my family in harm's way. The lowest moment for me, and I think some of the listeners can relate to this. My son had a one of these old school Tootsie Roll jars that I had as a kid, and it was full of quarters and coins. And I just stole it and left it on his bed. I mean, I didn't even try to hide it. Came home in a binge, and it was $77. I stole $77 in coins from my son, and that's how out of control I was. And I just didn't care at that moment. And we fast forward back to the arrest. So I've come home from jail, and my family, I felt like a dealer in Las Vegas. A high stakes person. You know when you're a high stakes person, the house is going to take care of you. But you also know, because of who you are, when the house has said it's over, and they really mean it. And we had that meeting with the family, and I kind of knew we had an attorney now. We're paying this very good attorney, and I'm facing the felony. And so we didn't know anything about treatment. We certainly didn't know anything about a recovery community or any of that stuff. We only knew a couple of commercials we had seen on TV. We found a place called MARR, MARR, 47 years in Atlanta. Delta sends their pilots there, all this stuff. It's a very, very good thing. 9 days minimum stay. So I'm angry, I'm scared. I don't want to go. I'm belligerent. I checked in. I was under family house arrest while we found these places. I couldn't do or say anything. I had no access to laptops without their permission, things like that. I checked in on the 2 days after Election Day 2016. 2 days after Election Day, I checked in. And I stayed there for 90 days. And I still go back twice a day now. I'm on the board of directors now. We can talk about that later. I've gone from the first words I asked in the check-in process. My wife's talking, they're talking to my wife, not me. I was told to sit there and shut up. And when they finally asked me what I wanted to say, I said, well, this is great. I'll come here. I said it arrogantly, but I want my own apartment. And they laughed and laughed. They explained, of course, that Mr. Arrogant doesn't get his own apartment. He'll have roommates and learn to like it. And I did. But so I checked into MARR, and I was so sick that my sponsor at this point and my treatment team, they're like, Jeff, you're not ready to go back to work. Even if you could find a job in your profession, you're just not ready. And my wife, God bless her, I've referenced her several times, 27 years of marriage. She's a saint. She's not given up on our marriage. We went into debt for 2 years because you got to be willing to do anything for recovery, anything. And it took a toll. We're not rich folks. We're just not. I mean, we have to have our jobs. And we went into debt for another 2 years until the treatment team said, okay, we're ready. And so that's kind of the story. And I can tell you what happened after that 2 years, later, the good news part of it. But that whole treatment really lasted 2 years and 90 days. Because during that 2 years, I was doing a whole treatment plan. Wasn't just sitting at home doing anything. So it was a big deal.
First of all, I love that you spent the time and the money to do this treatment. I don't believe it's actually ever over. Talk to me about early life. Everybody's trauma is a little bit different. What happened or what was going on that had you go to crack cocaine?
Sure. And I've processed this. I hate to say it. And he said, there was some trauma between my dad and I. So my parents loved me and my sister and all that. But at the root of it, my dad really wanted his son to play football. And his son, me, I wanted to play football. And I did for many years. And it was great. And I really wasn't half bad back in the day. But at one point in high school, even while I was being scouted, I just decided I didn't want to play anymore. And look, the way my dad reacted to that was to not talk to me for basically 2 years. So he never laid a hand on me. No physical abuse in my life, but there was some emotional abuse, and it was from zero to nuclear, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't process that very well. Now they also had some stuff going on, which was a second level trauma for me. Their marriage had some issues, and there were lots of fights in my childhood between them that I witnessed in the home in suburbia, and I think that played a little bit into it. But the real trauma was the emotional abuse of not talking to me. He was so deliberate. He didn't take my little car away. He gave me a little car. It wasn't anything fancy. It was just a nice car and a gas credit card. He didn't take that stuff away from me. Just took himself away from me. So I've processed through that was the trauma. And the sad part is, and God's plan that shows how we're not in control of anything, our higher power is but definitely stronger than any of us. I'm in MARR. And they make you tell your life story. And at this point, I had decided to take it seriously, right? And I opened up for the first time to a group of men about that situation. And MARR, of course, hears it, and they meet with me on my one-on-ones, and they're like, we're going to talk to your father, and we're going to begin to manage a process of professional reconciliation. And I was like, sure, sounds good. And as God would have it, right after I told my life story, my father had a heart attack and died while I was in treatment. And of course, there's protocols for that. I couldn't even go to the hospital to see him on his deathbed by myself. My community had to come with me as my guard, because you can't go out, mean, it was all humbling. It was all a process. But here's how God really did this. One of my roommates at the time in treatment was a cardiologist from Kentucky. Dr. Mike, we'll call him Dr. Mike because that's his first name. Dr. Mike, of course, went with me to the hospital, and he's talking to the nurse, explaining he's a doctor and a cardiologist of all things. And he's looking at the charts because the nurse let him do that. And he said, Jeff, I really do believe your dad can hear you. He's not going to be able to talk to you, but he can hear you. So the reconciliation of that trauma occurred with my father on his deathbed, a one-way conversation. I don't think that's the way it was supposed to happen, but it's the way God wanted it to happen. And so he passes away the next day, and I go to the funeral, and it's a funny story now, but it wasn't a funny story then. So my roommates MARR let my wife bring my suit to me, because I don't know about you, Dr. Kelly, but when I checked in as a man, I didn't take my suit to the treatment center. I just wasn't on my list. And so they let my wife bring the suit to the funeral home. And my roommates are talking. And I'm like, what are you people talking about? And they're like, well, we don't have suits. And we got to go with you. And we're going to stick out like a sore thumb. Well, my father was in the casket in a pair of khakis and a Georgia Tech football sweatshirt thing, hoodie pullover. So I called my mom. My mom is a Southern mom, right? I mean, Texans can get this. And you wear suits to funerals. That's what you do. Except maybe when the guy in the casket's not in a suit himself. And so I did have a Georgia Tech sweatshirt there at the treatment. And I said, Mom, I was thinking it'd be a good tribute to Dad if I wore a sweatshirt like he's got on. I was scared to death to tell her that. She said, that'd be a great idea. It was one of the first times in recovery that I learned to respect the desires of other human beings, my roommates, and to use my manipulation skills for good instead of how to get the next dose of drugs. So that's part of that trauma. It all involved my dad, and it lasted through the time of course, it lasted from when it happened, but in treatment, it lasted from when I told my life story, processed him passing unexpectedly, and how I've dealt with it since then. So we had a whole nother set of boundaries. I was on an all recovery meeting last night that we do, and the host shared about boundaries last night. And one of the hardest things for me in recovery has been, we have some boundaries around my mom and myself. And that's a serious thing. It's gotten harder because she's begun to get early stages of dementia, plus COVID, and she's 83 and we can't go inside with her. And so those original boundaries were hard enough, but you complicate it with a disease like dementia, and then you complicate it with COVID. And maintaining boundaries has also been important with that trauma, Jennifer, that you talked about. And that's been one of the hardest things, is to take that trauma and apply it to recovery and put my recovery first, even ahead of my mom's feelings.
I love that, Jeff. That's awesome. Guys, Jeff Breedlove's on the show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Hey guys, welcome back to the Recovery Channel podcast with my co-host usual, Jennifer Lovely and Jeff Breedlove on the show. If you just joined us, guys, welcome. It's a great story. Two-part question, Jeff. First of all, who tipped the police off to the hotel? And secondly, do you think you got special treatment?
Two great questions. So who tipped the police off? I called a friend who was himself a former police officer, and I thought might come just extract me, and help me get out of there and front me the money. And I'll say his first name is Mike, and apparently I know a lot of Mikes. And and this Mike made a different decision. This Mike called some police officers he knew in DeKalb County and said, look, this is exact. I mean, they knew exactly where I was. I told them the exact room number. I mean, they knew exactly where I was. And two police officers showed up. So a friend of mine who I called to extract me made the decision they were not going to enable me that night, that they were going to help me a different way. Did I get special treatment? I suspect there was a minor bit of it, and the manifestation of it was this. My boss had been a strong proponent, and so had I, for first responders, for the police and fire and 911 in our county. And there was the early stages of some of the unrest that we've seen going on back then. There had been rallies and police shootings and things like that, officer-involved shootings. So the sheriff, who was a member of the party opposite my boss, we knew very well, and he's of course a professional law enforcement politician. He made the decision that I could not go in the general population because if they found out who my boss was, that I would literally be in danger. So I got special treatment in the sense that because of who I worked for and the policies that she had supporting law enforcement, I couldn't be in the general population. Other than that, the answer is no. In fact, I can say with a straight face, because I've now spoken to people in the county. They were determined that there would be no stories that the white chief of staff, white male chief of staff, got special treatment from the county. So I had a massive fine. I did over 100 hours of community service. They didn't take away the felony until they added misdemeanors to keep me on probation longer. So the only special privilege I got, I think, was to not get killed in a jail thing where the county would face liability, frankly. But otherwise, they ran me through the system. It took a long time to get through the system. They didn't rush it. It was hanging over my head. And I would suggest to you that because of who I worked for, it was all monitored just a little bit closer.
Yeah.
So looking back, I appreciate it. And looking back, the DA acted appropriately. The probation office always acted appropriately. The county commissioners who I embarrassed acted appropriately. They have had me back to the commission. I've spoken before the commission and publicly. In Recovery Month, and they allowed me a minute to apologize to the county and to the taxpayers, and it was a very special moment. But so in one sense there was a little bit, but in the other sense it was extra burden put on me because of it, so they could not be accused of any favoritism.
Jeff, so both of my kids were first-time offenders and ended up they're recovering heroin addicts, but they both went to jail. They were both facing like 10 years to 20 years in prison for their drug offenses. And their mom came in and got a highfalutin attorney and paid their way out of that so that they could be in rehab and take care of themselves. But that was after 16 different rehabs. Based on what I've read, you were a big proponent of putting first-time drug offenders away. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. My hypocrisy is at the top of anybody's. If y'all were giving out an award for people hypocritical in addiction, I'd be right there. I worked for Bob Barr. That's who it was, Congressman Bob Barr, high-profile member of Congress in Georgia. I, as his senior advisor, was right there saying in the 1994 crime bill, which came up in the presidential campaign, look, Bob voted for that as a member of Congress. And I, with a straight face, was like, yeah, vote for that bill. That'll be great for your constituents. I was absolutely hypocritical in my active addiction on that and many other issues.
Don't you think, oh, wow. Okay. Great question, Jen, by the way. That was an awesome question. So you're using crack cocaine, you're running with Bob and bringing his, was there any guilt there?
Oh, sure. Yeah, there was guilt.
Why would you continue to do that?
Well, one of my counselors explained it to me best. So the average person is right about here, right? And they kind of fluctuate a little bit between that superiority complex and that inferiority complex. I was all like this. So that's how sick I was. I mean, I'm just a sick human being with a disease that I don't even recognize as a disease. And I'm out of control. I mean, I'm functioning on the one hand, I can function in society, but on the other hand, emotionally and mentally and spiritually, I'm just out of control. And so I'd sit in a meeting like with the two of you and think on the one hand, I'm the smartest person in this room, and if whatever project we're going to do, I got it, and I can beat Robb and Jennifer. On the other hand, I'd be like, boy, if I say this wrong word in one sentence, Robb and Jennifer are going to think I'm an idiot, and they're not going to invite me back to the next meeting. And I was sick, and I think a lot of people in substance use disorder, it goes back to that trauma. There's a lot of other issues going on besides the drugs themselves, and that certainly applied to me. So I'm just trying to get through the day back then, and I'm just saying and doing whatever I need to say or do to keep my paycheck. You know, I never appreciate another thing too, and I think people can understand this on a podcast like this. I didn't appreciate anything. You know, I had a great job with a great congressman, and I was looking for the next job. I could go to the White House and have a steak, and I wanted to know when was I going to Buckingham Palace. You know, I could meet celebrity A who won an Oscar, and I want to know why I hadn't met the guys that won the Emmys. I never was ever satisfied, and I never appreciated. And that insatiable desire to egotistically to do the next best thing, that ties into the way I was thinking about policy. So I wanted to be the best policy advisor, and I was saying things that were contrary. Look, this is what I've said too. I lied to a lot of people in 30 years. The person I lied to the most was myself, bar none. And the person I hurt the worst was myself. No matter how much I hurt my wife, my son, my parents, whoever, Jennifer, Robb, whoever I hurt myself more. And I lied to myself more. And I would say and do things contrary to my own well-being because I thought it was the right thing to say, even though I knew in my heart, deep, deep, deep down, buried under all those drugs and all that pain and all that disease, I knew it really wasn't. And that's one reason why I do what I do today. And why I'm part of the team, I'm part of the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse today, is because I'm extremely committed to advocating for my disease and my community because of what I did, you know.
Yeah. And what I hear in that is that you were deeply afraid of authority figures because your dad ignored you for 2 years. And so if I can put people away, I can keep my shame down, I can put people away and they will like me and they will approve of me.
Makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I mean,
yeah.
I like that. You've got to be careful with Jennifer because she kind of knows more than we do on this. I mean, she's awesome the way she goes back. I'm being serious.
I believe it. You have to call me after the show, Jennifer.
It's hard. It's really hard to get to them questions. Guys, right back after this. Give us 2 seconds. Hey guys, welcome back to the back end of the show. Recovery Channel podcast is here. My name is Dr. Robb Kelly, the addiction doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely, and Jeff Breedlove is on the show today. So Jeff, now we've grilled you on the past. Let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to the good stuff. Georgia Recovers. Tell us what you do today to help and yourself.
Absolutely. So you'll see behind me this little banner because I'm working at home because of COVID, but I'm a team member. I'm the chief of communications and policy with a great group of people called the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse. And we are 501c3. We're celebrating this year our 20th anniversary of service and leadership in Georgia for the recovery community. We have an executive director, Neil Campbell, who should be a guest on your show. She celebrated 30 years this year. She was a law enforcement officer in Key West, Florida in the freaking 80s. I mean, Miami, right there, baby. And Neil has her own wonderful journey of recovery. And for the past 12 years, after working for the Georgia governor as one of the first employees in the state of Georgia for the governor on addiction and recovery, she became the executive director 12 years ago of the Council on Substance Abuse. She went from herself, one employee, to now 32 employees, full-time, 2 part-time. We have a program where we train for the state of Georgia these certified cares peers that get certification to work in the recovery community. We have over 750 cares. We do at least 5 a year, sometimes more, sometimes never less. We have a CARES warm line, 844-326-5400. It's staffed by peers. It's a warm line because you don't have to be in crisis. You can be in crisis, but you might just want about resources. You might have a family member you're trying to help. You might be in recovery and can't afford a Jennifer, so you just need somebody to talk to. So we've got the CARES warm line. We've got peers in hospitals now. It's a pilot program where they're in the NICUs and the emergency rooms, and they're trained and they work with the doctors and nurses. It's a wonderful thing. And of course, we have our recovery community organizations, which are all led by peers. We have 32 of them right now in communities across Georgia. And they set the standard. And I just joined the team about just over a year and a half ago. So I'm kind of a newbie. And they are clearly not perfect because they let me join the team. But still, I'm a part of a great team. And Neil's our great leader. And I advocate a lot. And we've had some tough times with COVID and the budget in Georgia. Georgia, you have to have a balanced budget. And we were going to get cut up to 70% at one point. And we have Neil Campbell led the way. And we have one of I think there's only 3 in the nation, basically a caucus. It's called a working group in the Georgia General Assembly, but it's a bipartisan Senate and House. We have a Democrat co-chair in the House, a Republican co-chair in the Senate, and it's a working group, the General Assembly Working Group on Addiction and Recovery. It's over 47 members strong. And because we had that in place, we were able to advocate aggressively to the governor's office, aggressively to the department that we work with. And the commissioner of the department, she's a wonderful champion, Commissioner Judy Fitzgerald. And Judy needed our voice, and we needed Judy's voice. And Judy got the recovery community organized. And we were able to basically get 0 cuts, from 75 to basically 0. We saved recovery across the state. And all those programs that I just talked about still exist today in spite of COVID. And we were blessed. And so we had, going into the session, because the session suspended too, by the way, because of COVID. So they started back up much later. We had a Zoom call with over 500 people having a recovery rally. Before COVID, at the Capitol in person, we had 1,300 people at the state Capitol on what we call Addiction Recovery Awareness Day, or ARAD for short. 1,300 people in recovery at the Capitol. Well, the governor kicked off today for us. We are building in Georgia, unapologetically, a constituency of consequence, just like the cancer community has built, just like Alzheimer's, just like the AIDS community has built. Any disease you want to name, we're organizing just like they are. There's over 800,000 people in recovery in Georgia. We are organizing them daily. Every day we're bringing new people into the coalition, and we are making it where the stakeholders in this state, from business. Here's what it gets me about business, y'all. Georgia businesses are very famous. Delta, Home Depot, Coca-Cola, there's some more. UPS. They'll give millions of dollars to our friends at the Human Rights Campaign Fund, and they are our friends, for Pride Month. And good for them for building those relationships. We have to build those relationships with the business community that break that stigma, that we're their customers too. Because we have Recovery Month every year, and we haven't earned a single dollar from the business community in Georgia for events in Recovery Month. It's all graciously done by the state. So we have to break down barriers with businesses. We have to break down barriers with elected officials. Some of the biggest stigma in this state, Rob, you said earlier, here's something that might get me in trouble. Some of the biggest stigma in our state are with pastors and educators. Hey, there's no drugs in my school, or there's no drugs in our congregation. No addicts here. Yeah, right. So we have a lot of work yet to do, but because of Neil Campbell and because of the council, we are doing great things in Georgia to build up the community in a positive way. We say nothing about us without us. We say recovery is real. We do town hall meetings. We've had U.S. Senator. We've had multiple members of the House. We've had the governor, countless members of the legislature on our virtual town hall meetings. Our advocacy is rocking and rolling. And I know I'm going on, but I should get a plug in for one more thing that we did because of COVID. So go back to February. And we got to, a lot of us are in the AAs or the A's. And we start hearing from others too. Hey, the rooms are closing because of COVID. Now Neil Campbell will tell you the opposite of addiction is connection, period. That's full sentence. So if the rooms are shutting down and traditional ways of meeting in person are shutting down, even if it's not an A room, how do we serve the community? What do we do? Well, we had no idea. Let me just tell you up front. We had no earthly idea. Except a guy on our team named Brian Kite, wonderful recovery leader himself. He had just gotten a Zoom. He said, maybe we could use Zoom to have meetings. So we tried it. We had an all recovery meeting. We had no idea if it would work. Oh my gosh, we had over 100 people. Mm-hmm. And then people got mad at us because they're like, when's the next one? There was no next one. So long story short, we started planning some of these, and they got Zoom bombed like everybody else got Zoom bombed, and we processed through all that Zoom bombing stuff. And now here's the good news on that. The English version is twice a day at 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern time, 7 days a week. Then it grew to twice a week in Spanish. And then it grew to once a week for the LGBTQ community. So I'm really bad at math, but we're doing a lot of meetings every week. And there are people from all over Georgia, from all over the country, and some internationally that pop on these meetings. So it grew from here's a crisis of how do you stay connected during COVID to, frankly, we've got a program that our peers in other states are like, can we invite people onto your meetings for? That's the kind of leadership Neil Campbell has put together in Georgia. And that's the kind of positive stuff we do. And that's just one of the things we've done during COVID to respond. I do want to say, too, I mentioned that CARES warm line at 844-326-5400 to tell you some not good news, but good news at the same time. The calls during COVID, the anonymity's there. I mean, there's nobody knows who's calling, but we know how many calls we get. We know the number of calls we get. And we know that mathematically we can prove since February, the calls have gone up and up and up and up. Every month, the calls go up during COVID. But what the coaches will tell Neil is it's the intensity of the calls that are alarming. It's the anxiety and the stress of losing a job, losing a loved one, the fear, the pressure, the new cases of addiction happening, the threats of setbacks. We don't call them relapses, we call them setbacks. But all that stuff, just to use some real language for a minute, the intensity, the pressure on our community during COVID has been there. And the Dr. Fauci of Georgia is a lady named Dr. Kathleen Toomey. She reports to the governor and does press conferences on the COVID numbers and COVID updates for the state of Georgia. She's done 2 memos during COVID. She calls it the epidemic within the pandemic. The state of Georgia now has proof twice on their reporting mathematical science stuff of cases in the emergency rooms across our state of overdoses on the rise during COVID. And so we unfortunately know from our state that COVID has impacted overdose situations in our hospitals. So we championed that message from Dr. Toomey that this is the epidemic within the pandemic. This is a time that stakeholders have to understand. During COVID, funding for substance use disorder has to be increased, not kept the same, not decreased, because it's that stress, it's that trauma that leads to new cases, that leads to, I'll say, relapses, just for people to understand. And now more than ever, if there's any secondary medical issue to COVID, it's substance use disorder and it's life and death. And we have to have support from everybody for this community.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And you're right, 37% now alcohol in Texas. Drug addiction's gone up. Suicide's gone up. It's all due to COVID. We have run out of time, Jeff. What an absolute amazing 45 minutes we just spent. Guys, I'm just going to look at the bottom of the screen. gasubstanceabuse.org is the website you can visit. Just want to say thank you so much indeed, Jeff, for being a part of this show today. So for me, I want to say thank you.
And I really want to just, acknowledge you for all that you have done in Georgia, for your recovery, for staying in the recovery. I really see your heart in this. And, thank you for really being in that, truly. And also, there's no money in recovery. And we know that there's no money in recovery, right? Which is why we struggle that. But from myself and Dr. Robb as well, if there's anything that we can support you in, how we can partner, create something, please let's stay in touch so that we can do that.
Absolutely. Let's stay in touch. And I'll be very brief. I want to thank Neil Campbell and my brothers and sisters in recovery and on the council's team. I'm one of many folks in our RCO leaders across the state. We have a great team in Georgia. Let's definitely stay in touch. We're also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Follow us there. We're doing great things. We welcome followers from across the country, especially Texas.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, don't forget, if you want me and Jennifer to pop over and speak anywhere, it's only going to cost you 1 cent. That's not too bad, is it?
No. Hey, listen, let's seriously talk offline because we're doing ARAD coming up. It's going to be virtual, and maybe we can do some stuff. Let's get together. Yeah.
We've just doing a few conventions, so we're pretty sought after at the moment. But with your story and what you've done for Georgia, we want to be part of that, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Thank you. We love it. We love it. Thank you. It's a privilege to be on the show.
Thank you. Hey, guys, we're back just after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the show, at the back end of the show, Recovery Channel podcast with me, Dr. Robb Kelly, and Jennifer Lovely. Jen, what was that about? That was awesome.
That was so good.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had anybody on that high level, in kind of the government that's taken a fall like that. Because I've got to be honest, most people would walk away from that and want to brush that underneath the carpet. But that was awesome. That was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and his level of care for his constituents and the people in his community is amazing. It's always so meaningful when people take their experiences and create something beautiful from it, and that's what I really got from it. Yeah, definitely. And a friend kind of makes a phone call, and before you know it, there it is, you're surrounded by police. Wow, that's what a great comeback! What a great comeback story. I really like stuff like that. And the viewers, it was steady throughout. You see people dropping off, coming back. That people were really looking at that and thinking that's an awesome story. Absolutely awesome story, guys. Yeah. We want to thank you for joining and staying with us on the show. I know you have. We're here probably a couple of times this week. We'll be back. We'll give you plenty of notice on Facebook. But watch out across Podbean, and all the platform sites will be on starting next week, I think. But for now, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And don't forget, you can find me and John on me and John. Who the hell's John? Me and Jen on all that's a tongue tire. Me and Jen on all the social media podcasts. But for now, guys, for me, I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, you guys. Have an amazing week. Chat soon.
Bye-bye, guys.